to the Transportation Infrastructure and Planning Subcommittee. It is September 15th, 2021. And I believe we have a quorum, and we're going to try to move along fairly quickly today. So some of our council members are attending a fallen firefighter. So with that, I think we first have call to the public. Do we have any speakers?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have 3 members of the public registered to speak this morning. Our first speaker is Michelle Hornstein. Michelle, are you on the line? Michelle is not on the line. Our second speaker this morning is Ruby Hernandez. Ruby, are you on the line? Ruby is not on the line either. Our third speaker this morning is Lucia Salinas. Lucia, are you on the line? It looks like none of our speakers are on the line this morning.
All right, thank you. So we'll move to approval of the minutes. That would have been the old subcommittee, TINI. But can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Councilwoman
Okay.
Stark.
The minutes carried.
Councilwoman Stark.
The next, yes.
Apologies, Lucia jumped on the line really quick, but she just fell back off. So I'll let you know if we see her again at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we?
Madam Chair, items 2 through 5 are information-only items. If there are any questions, staff is here to answer, but otherwise we don't have any presentations planned for item 2 through 5.
Okay, then we'll move on to item 6.
And Madam Chair, just so that we can, I know that time is short this morning, so that we can manage the expectations on the items that are going to be presented. Item 8 is the light rail capital extension recommendation, and that item is going to be moved out to the next subcommittee meeting in October. So we will not be presenting today on that item. We'll be discussing that at the next subcommittee meeting. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that there was not a plan to discuss that item today. We are available if there are any questions, but if not, we'll proceed to item 6, and then we'll go to item 7, and that will be the last presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, Keeney.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. We're here today to share information about a potential program for our downtown area, specifically the installation of interactive digital kiosks in the downtown area. The item is for information and discussion, so no action at this time, as we are requesting input and feedback from subcommittee members as to whether staff should move forward with the development and implementation of this program. With me today is Chris Yule, one of our Deputy Street Transportation Directors. He'll be taking you through the majority of the presentation, but before I turn it over to Chris, I wanted to provide a brief background on what brought us here today. I should mention, let me get the PowerPoint presentation up. There we go. I should mention that kiosks in the downtown area are not a new concept. The downtown area had kiosks for a number of years. These were managed by Downtown Phoenix, Inc., or DPI. The information on the kiosk were not digital or easily changeable. They were static. They aged, and they were ultimately removed and needed to be removed as they were beyond their useful life. In early 2020, prior to the pandemic, we were approached by Downtown or DPI representatives to discuss the possibility of moving forward with the program to install digital interactive kiosks in the downtown area. The intent was to provide a better experience for people in the downtown area, including workers, residents, and of course our visitors. The locations of the static kiosks that were since removed were about 6 locations in the downtown area. DPI has been interested in the digital kiosk concept for a number of years prior to the most recent conversations that started last year. We know that there are a number of reasons why the city has not moved forward with this program in the past, and we will cover a number of those in our presentation. But to quickly summarize, some of the issues include ownership and control of the kiosks, capabilities and amenities of the kiosks, that these kiosks are located in a public right-of-way and not on city property or private property, the costs of these kiosks and who bears the responsibility, the advertising component that is key to the kiosk program, treatment of revenues generated by the kiosks, maintenance and durability of electronic kiosks in Phoenix's climate, and that's just some of the issues that we've noted in the past. Now I'm going to turn over the presentation to Chris, and I'll pick it up near the end.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we've been researching how Valley cities and cities in other states have been utilizing digital kiosks. Tempe was the first Arizona city to install digital kiosks and did so in early 2020. They have 15 kiosks in their downtown area. They're intended to promote social equity, economic development, and enhance public safety, as well as provide information to the public when they're in the downtown area. They are enabled with free Wi-Fi, and they are owned by, in this case, the kiosks are owned by the kiosk vendor, but they're operated by the Downtown Tempe Authority. Kiosks in Mesa were installed in early 2021. They have 10 kiosks in their downtown area. Again, these are also enabled with free Wi-Fi. They do provide real-time transit information. They were given to the city of Mesa from the vendor, and then they're operated in conjunction with their Downtown Mesa Association, which is similar to DPI in Phoenix. Kiosks in Dallas are actually operated by their Downtown Area Rapid Transit group. That's a part of Dallas. Yeah, they have 300 plus locations at their transit facilities. They are enabled with free Wi-Fi as well, and they recently upgraded to touchless via mobile device connectivity. Essentially, you scan a QR code and the kiosk information comes up on your phone. These kiosks are also owned by the kiosk vendor, and again, they're operated by DART. Kiosk functionality. So kiosks essentially can do pretty much anything you want in terms of providing information to the public. You can provide information on area food and drink establishments. You can provide information on any type of community calendar that you want to do, whether that's a city calendar, if it's a downtown calendar, sporting events. You could even put ASU's calendar on there if you wanted. There's quite a few options. Additionally, information about activities that are going on that day or later in the week. Obviously, bowling, we do have a bowling alley downtown, but we do have two large sporting events locations, as you know, that we could direct them to, as well as other activities such as concerts and such. Additionally, some civic type functions, social services, directions to locations either downtown or in the area as needed, things like homeless resident services as well, other functions. Primarily for the city would be definitely interested in civic resources with the 3 different layers of government downtown, facilities that people may need to go to court or get a permit. We can give them direction on that and then directly link into the websites. As well as just exploring downtown, whether it's trying to find a park, open space, if you're possibly even, if you're looking to rent some residential capacity downtown. There's a lot of functions, as I said, that you can put on one of these kiosks. So digital kiosks vary quite a bit depending upon which municipality you're in. This is a rendering that was provided by a kiosk vendor to DPI a few years ago. This location that's shown in the graphic is at the northwest corner of Central and Adams, and it's just a conceptual of how it could look. This is a little bit more elaborate than most kiosks are. It does have some decorative side panels. It does have shade structure, and then they've enhanced the landscaping and ambiance. So some of the key features of digital kiosks, They are ADA accessible. You can, there's a lot of functionality. We've been researching, there's no voice command option at this time, but there may be in the very near future. Information can be translated into multiple languages. And advertising shows on the kiosk when it's not being utilized by a user. In terms of revenue, the kiosks do operate on revenue generated through advertising sales. These revenue is shared between the municipality and the kiosk vendor. There's multiple avenues of how that's handled, and that would be sorted out in an actual contract agreement with a successful kiosk vendor if we choose to go that route. Additionally, some key considerations, Keeney mentioned some of this, upfront costs to the city. Most kiosk vendors do absorb the costs and pay themselves back for the upfront costs through revenue generated. They are installed in the public right-of-way, so things like site visibility and making sure that we're not imposing on pedestrian traffic is important. Kiosk ownership, maintenance, and control. Traditionally, these kiosks have been owned by the vendors themselves and not by the municipalities. And then, again, advertising in the public right-of-way is not permitted under the city code, so we would have to go to city council for that change for this use. And the good thing is that we already do have an established advertising guidelines with the bus stops that we have in Phoenix. So we do have a good model that we can use for controlling the advertising in the right-of-way. Now, with vendor selection, an open competitive procurement would be required. Requests for information would be what we would look at issuing to the industry to see what would be the best functionality and options for Phoenix. And then a request for proposals would be issued after that to do a solicitation process for a kiosk vendor. And I'll turn it back over to Keeney.
Thank you, Chris. In conclusion, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, kind of we're looking for input on the next steps on this this process that we're working on. So we would love to hear your individual or collective feedback about the concept of interactive digital kiosks in the downtown area and whether this is something that staff should continue to work on. And if so, what involvement or input you would like to have in regards to the procurement process. I would also note that we have a similar presentation or the exact presentation scheduled for the downtown subcommittee, the EDE subcommittee next week. And I know the majority of this subcommittee is also on there. So if you aren't able to get your input in today, we obviously will have the opportunity next week as well. So with that, we'd be happy to have any questions or any comments the subcommittee may have.
Thanks, Keeney. I have a quick question. I think one of our goals is to try to get this up and running before the Super Bowl comes to Phoenix. So do you have some concept of when we need to get this proposal out?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, our intent would be, obviously we're here today to talk about this in September. If we get similar feedback about potentially moving this forward, we think we'd be able to issue a request for information as early as October with responses back in a couple months, and our hope would be able to have a request for proposals, if this was the direction we end up directed to go, that we could put out in January, and I think that would give us enough time to be able to have kiosks in place for the Super Bowl in the following year.
Great. And then my second question is, if this concept works well in the downtown area and we might want to use the kiosks in other parts of the city, for example, uptown or somewhere maybe around our light rail, could we have this replicated?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I think the one thing we'd note on there is the downtown area. Obviously, we've been approached by DPI, and they're a great partner in what we do in the downtown area. And so there might be some things that we work with DPI on the management of these kiosks and the operation of these kiosks that we may not be able to benefit from their assistance or their input in other areas of the city. But that's something we could work through if that's if it becomes a good concept that we could expand to other areas. And I think we could also build that into the contract or the procurement itself, so the ability to expand this if we needed to or if we wanted to.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Are there any questions from the subcommittee? I see Councilwoman O'Brien?
Thank you, Chairwoman Stark. You talked about the language related to, or the ordinance around buses and advertising in the right of way there. Can you forward that to us so that we can see that? Would we be able to duplicate that ordinance for this type of downtown kiosk?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, the one thing on the existing city code, the city code grants an exception for advertising at bus stops. So the bus stop public transit advertising guidelines have been in place for a number of years. You might know that recently, last week at council, approved an exception to the city code to allow advertising and on some of the billboards in the downtown area that encroach in the right of way. And those standards and guidelines have been in place with the Legends Entertainment Sign District for a number of years. So we could replicate those with this as well. It would be more that. And there's only a couple differences between the public transit advertising guidelines and the ones we use for the downtown area currently.
Okay, so you could forward us the language with the exception for these downtown kiosks then.
Correct.
I appreciate that.
We'll get
I
that.
do think, thank you so much. I do think that this is a great example of how we can, bring our government into the 21st century again and offer, these kiosks will offer our citizens and our visitors, access to learning about our city services, find places to eat and go, and have opportunities to visit places they might not have otherwise found, in addition to hopefully creating a new revenue stream. So I am definitely in support of us moving forward into our next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Are
Chairwoman.
there any other comments? So I guess, Keeney, if you might consider again the timetable, because I really want to make sure we have them in place for the Super Bowl, and then maybe looking at a way we could use these kiosks in other parts of the city. Those would be my two comments.
And Chairwoman Stark, I would concur on, what it would look like potentially in other areas, especially as the light rail comes up to Metro Center and
Right.
different busy areas of our community. I think, especially with the ability to connect to city services. And
Yeah, actually, Metro Center was one of the areas I was thinking of, as well as maybe the uptown portion of Central Avenue, and then maybe where the old Paradise Valley Mall was. So
Yeah.
I think there's some great opportunities, and I want to make sure we're open to those.
I would concur.
Are there any other comments?
Chairwoman,
Well,
this is
yes.
Councilwoman Guardado. Yeah,
Hi.
I would also agree that I think that we should try to do this in other parts of the city, especially, as Councilwoman O'Brien said, as the light rail is coming into different parts of the city, maybe even considering around different universities and the different schools, with Innovation 27 coming into the area. I think that would be another great area to think about it. So yeah, definitely expansion throughout the city would be great.
Yeah, great comments. Appreciate it. Anything else? Well, I guess we'll see the presentation again, but thank you, Keeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, our next item is bus rapid transit.
Yes, Madam Chair, Bus Rapid Transit is an item we're all very excited about, and this was,
Yes.
as you know, one of the modes of transit that was presented on the Proposition 104 ballot for our Transportation 2050 program, and we're ready to move forward with the recommendation on the first corridor. Here to present on this item are Jesus Sapien, Public Transit Director, Matthew Taunton, and Sarah Katecki, Deputy Public Transit Director. And I'll turn it over to Jesus to start the presentation.
Thank you, Mario. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I will keep my comments brief, just to let you know that BRT is an important component of the T2050 plan that voters approved. in August of 2015, and the team has been working in earnest to conduct some analysis relative to where future BRT corridors should be placed. And I will turn it over to Sarah Kotecki and Matthew Taunton on the BRT team so they can walk you through some of the information which you've already seen because we hosted a executive workshop early last year. So some of it will be a reminder, but just to walk you through some of the analysis that was done and some of the recommendations we have today. Sarah?
All right, thank you, Jesus. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to share with all of you our progress on the Bus Rapid Transit program. It's been a while since we last met, so I wanted to give a quick refresher on how we got to this point. In 2015, Phoenix voters approved Proposition 104, creating the 35-year street and transit plan known as Transportation 2050, or T2050, and BRT was identified as a key component of T2050 to expand our high-capacity transit network. So we have a commitment to deliver BRT to the 5th largest city in the U.S. In 2019, the BRT program was directed by the Citizens Transportation Commission and City Council to reevaluate the initial corridors that were identified on Prop 104 and also identify other potential corridors for consideration. And this was a data-driven process. We took a three-pronged approach. We looked at transit propensity, transit performance, and ridership forecasting. 6 potential corridors were identified from this process, and the focus were on those corridors that would be the most productive and have the highest demand and highest need. So these 6 potential corridors were discussed and explored in a technical workshop held in December 2019 with multiple city departments, Maricopa Association of Governments, Arizona Department of Transportation, and Valley Metro, and also in 2 executive workshops held in January and February of 2020 with Citizens Transportation Commission members and City Council. The next step after the transit analysis was the community education and engagement component, which commenced in February of 2020. And for the next 11 months, we provided opportunities to the public to get involved with the process and the BRT program. As for previous action, most recently we presented to the Citizens Transportation Commission on May 27th. We requested the Commission recommend City Council approval of an initial bus rapid transit corridor of 35th Avenue and Van Buren Street. And there was a unanimous vote in support of moving this item forward. But before we dive into exactly how we arrived at this final recommendation, I wanted to talk about BRT 101. So quickly, Bus Rapid Transit is a high-capacity bus service focused on improved speed, reliability, convenience, and the overall transit experience. BRT offers design flexibility, and there are common recurring elements found in successful BRT systems, including enhanced stations, unique branding, advanced fare collection, custom buses, dedicated lanes, and transit spot improvements. I'm going to pass it over to Matthew. He's going to highlight the results of the transit analysis that we presented to the subcommittee back in November of 2019.
Thanks, Sarah. So when we last presented to the subcommittee, we talked about how we had inventoried all bus routes within the city. And the map on the left, this shows the 1-mile arterial segments with the highest local bus ridership in Phoenix. And these segments are typically on the routes with the highest frequency, and they often connect with light rail or other frequent bus service. But one question that we received throughout the community engagement process was what has changed in terms of ridership because of COVID. So we conducted the same transit analysis using data from this past fall. And while the total system-wide ridership is down, the trend lines remain very much the same, as you can see on the map on the right. So using this ridership by segment data, as well as the transit propensity, transit performance, and ridership forecast data, we identified 6 potential BRT corridors, and I'll go through these one by one. And for reference, on the map, the gray line is the existing light rail, and the gray cross-hatching are the future light rail extensions. So the 6 potential BRT corridors are Camelback 24th Street, Indian School 24th Street, Thomas 44th Street, McDowell 44th Street, 35th Avenue Van Buren, and 19th Avenue Van Buren. So based on the results of our transit analysis, the 3 highest performing BRT corridors are Camelback 24th Street, Thomas 44th Street, and 35th Avenue Van Buren. And overall, these corridors provided the highest ridership. They typically had the best geographic coverage and spacing, and they complemented both our existing and future transit networks in Phoenix. And these corridors were also recommended by attendees at our BRT technical workshop. Now, the results of our transit analysis are the first step in recommending the BRT corridors. Sarah's going to discuss the next step, which is the results of the community engagement.
Thanks, Matthew. So our community education and engagement efforts ran from February to December 2020, and during these 11 months, we held 26 in-person or virtual meetings, connected with over 1,200 people, and fielded nearly 600 questions and comments. We employed both traditional in-person and virtual outreach methods. All materials were provided in both English and Spanish. We also have a community engagement summary, which is a document compiled highlighting the community outreach efforts and summarizes the findings. And the engagement summary can be found in your packet today. So here's a list of the outreach tools and materials that we use to engage and educate the public and solicit feedback, including a BRT 101 video, our program webpage, multiple meeting opportunities, our survey, and also a social media campaign. Here's a timeline of the BRT program activities. In February 2020, we launched our webpage, our social media campaign, and began meeting with Phoenix community groups and stakeholders. In March, we started meeting with all 15 village planning committees. June, we launched our BRT 101 video and our survey. July, we launched an online meeting webpage, and in November, we held 2 live virtual public meetings, one in English and one in Spanish. So the program webpage, Phoenix.gov/BRT, was designed to educate and engage the public, and it houses an educational video, transit analysis maps, general project information, frequently asked questions. And we had 4,581 page views, and the BRT 101 video received 1,040 views in English and 92 in Spanish during that 11-month period. Also, we opened an online meeting webpage, meetphoenixbrt.com, to provide information on the Phoenix BRT and also to solicit input on those 6 potential BRT corridors. And the site contained the BRT presentation in video form, allowing people to view the presentation at their leisure. We received 766 page views during that time, and the online meeting had 300 English views and 89 Spanish views. So during the meetings, we met with 26 groups, both in person and virtually. We presented to over 690 stakeholders, committee members, and general public, and answered over 115 questions during the meetings. So let's shift our focus to the survey, Shape Your BRT. The survey was launched in June 2020, and it remained opened until December 18th, 2020, and this was a 16-question survey focused on capturing information about BRT and the sentiment of BRT in Phoenix. We received 474 responses, and the 6 potential BRT corridors were front and center. And Matthew will now highlight findings from the survey.
Thanks, Sarah. So this slide shows the respondents by zip code. Now, the majority of the responses we received were in the areas represented by the 6 potential BRT corridors, and the larger the circle, that indicates the higher number of respondents. So this question focused on the preferred east-west corridor for BRT. Respondents ranked each corridor between 1 and 4, with 1 being most preferred and 4 being least preferred, and these numbers represent the average scores for each. Based on the results of the survey, Camelback 24th Street and Thomas 44th Street were most preferred. This question focused on the preferred north-south corridor. Respondents selected their preferred corridor, and these numbers represent the percent preferred. Based on the results of the survey, 35th Avenue Van Buren was most preferred. So out of all the elements of BRT, we know that dedicated lanes will require the most discussion and attention. So we asked a question regarding lane preference for BRT. Respondents ranked the lane configuration options between 1 and 3, with 1 being most preferred and 3 being least preferred. And again, these numbers represent the average scores for each. Now, bus-only lanes were identified as most preferred. So the community engagement results showed that Camelback 24th Street, Thomas 44th Street, and 35th Avenue Van Buren were most preferred. And this is positive because this mirrors the results from our transit analysis as well.
So our next steps include requesting action by Phoenix City Council to approve the initial bus rapid transit corridor recommendation. We will refine our program schedule. We'll begin corridor planning. We'll establish corridor-specific outreach, identify funding opportunities, and collaborate with other city departments and agencies. At this time, there is only one corridor shown on this map for the final recommendation, while the Camelback 24th Street and Thomas 44th Street corridors were also identified as most preferred during the technical analysis and the community education and engagement efforts. There is ongoing analysis for future high-capacity transit in West Phoenix, and that may affect the east-west BRT corridors. So it is recommended that a final decision on the east-west BRT corridors be deferred until there's further resolution on the high-capacity transit corridors in West Phoenix. And with that, the Public Transit Department requests the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Planning Subcommittee recommend City Council approval of an initial bus rapid transit corridor of 35th Avenue and Van Buren Street. This concludes our presentation. We'll be more than happy to answer anyone's questions. Thank you.
So just, could you reiterate why we're choosing just the one corridor?
Chairwoman Stark, members of the subcommittee, there's been interest in an analysis of high-capacity transit options in West Phoenix, particularly west of Central Avenue, and because that outcome may impact the overall BRT options, we decided to defer any east-west BRT corridor recommendations at this point in time until there's a better understanding of the direction that we will head as far as high-capacity transit in West Phoenix.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And I believe Councilwoman Pastor has joined us.
I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman O'Brien?
Oh, no questions, sorry.
Oh, okay. I saw the camera come on. So are there any other questions?
I can make a motion.
Okay, please.
Motion to approve item 7, bus rapid transit program.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I believe that's the end of our agenda. Oh, pardon me, we actually have call to the public. Has anyone joined?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, nobody has joined from the request to speak list.
Okay. Thank you. And then future agenda items, I think we're pretty full for October, so we are going to have a very busy October subcommittee meeting. Are there any other comments? Then we adjourn. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Three years later, the Associated Press voted her Woman Athlete of the Half Century. Then, at the